I built an empire with my own two hands, working for 45 years without rest. At 72, my daughter Elaine and my son-in-law, Victor, planned to have me declared mentally incompetent, so they could steal everything I had worked so hard to build. What they never expected was that my 10-year-old granddaughter Olivia would discover their plan and secretly reveal it to me. The way I got my revenge left my entire family in complete shock, but what happened afterward changed our lives forever. My name is Harriet Blackwell, and this is the story of how I saved my life's work thanks to my granddaughter's honesty and the savvy I developed during a lifetime building a real estate empire in Boston. It all began 3 months before Olivia's 10th birthday. I had noticed strange changes in my daughter Elaine's behavior. Suddenly, she started visiting me more frequently, always accompanied by Victor, her husband of 12 years. At first, I was pleased, thinking it was a renewed interest in spending time with their elderly mother. But I soon noticed something unsettling about their visits. "Mom, this house is way too big for you to manage alone," Elaine said during one of her visits as we had coffee on the terrace of my mansion in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most exclusive neighborhoods. "I always worry you might fall down the stairs or that something could happen while you're here by yourself." "Elaine, I've lived here for 30 years. I know every corner of this house," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. "Besides, Martha comes to clean 3 times a week, and Frank takes care of the garden. I'm not completely alone." Victor, who until then had remained unusually quiet, chimed in with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Blackwell, Elaine has a point. At your age, you should think about simplifying your life. Why maintain such a large property? The taxes, maintenance, security, all of that must be an unnecessary burden." "Mrs. Blackwell?" Victor had always called me Harriet, or simply Mom. This sudden formality struck me as strange and suspicious. Even stranger was his concern about my finances, something he had never shown interest in before. "I appreciate your concern," I replied, maintaining my composure, "but I'm perfectly capable of managing my life and my properties." The conversation shifted to other topics, but something inside me became unsettled. After 45 years managing real estate businesses, I had developed an instinct for detecting when something wasn't right. And at that moment, all my internal alarms were ringing loudly. That night, while reviewing some documents for my properties, I remembered how it all began. I was born in a humble neighborhood in South Boston, the daughter of a plumber and a seamstress. At 20, with savings from my first job as a store clerk, I opened a small grocery store. I met Theodore, my late husband, when he came to install shelving in my shop. We married 6 months later. Theodore was an electrician, hardworking and honest, but he lacked business vision. I, on the other hand, always dreamed of more. When I sold my store with a small profit, I proposed to Theodore that we invest in a property to renovate and sell. He was skeptical at first, but trusted me. We bought a small, deteriorated apartment in Somerville, renovated it ourselves, working nights and weekends, and sold it 6 months later with a 40% profit. That's how our real estate business began. While Theodore maintained his job as an electrician, I became the mind behind our investments. Buy, renovate, sell, and then reinvest all the money. We never allowed ourselves unnecessary luxuries. Every penny earned went back into the business. Elaine was born when I was 35. By then, we already owned 5 apartment buildings and 3 commercial properties. I remember holding her in my arms for the first time, promising her that she would never know the hardships I had experienced in my childhood. Everything I built was for her future. Theodore passed away 15 years ago from a heart attack. By then, our real estate empire included 20 residential buildings, 10 commercial properties in the best areas of Boston, and vacation properties on Cape Cod. After his death, many expected me to sell the business, to retire as the poor widow. Instead, I redoubled my efforts, and in the following years, I tripled our assets. My reminiscing was interrupted by the sound of my phone. It was Gregory, my manager at First Commonwealth Bank, where I keep some of my main accounts. "Mrs. Blackwell, sorry to call so late, but there's something I think you should know," he said with a worried voice. Your son-in-law was at the bank today, asking questions about your accounts and recent transactions. My blood ran cold. What kind of questions, Gregory? He asked if you had made any large withdrawals lately, if you had changed your spending patterns, if you ever seemed confused when making transactions. Gregory paused. He said the family was concerned about your mental health and your ability to handle your finances. That felt like a punch to the gut. My mental health? My son-in-law questioning my ability to manage the money I had earned myself? What did you tell him, Gregory? Mrs. Blackwell, I've worked with you for 20 years. I told him that you have always managed your accounts with absolute precision, and that I've never observed any erratic or confused behavior. I explained that, according to bank policies, I couldn't give him any information about your accounts without your express authorization. Thank you, Gregory. You did the right thing, I replied, my mind racing. Could you monitor if Elaine or Victor try to access my accounts again? And please, don't provide them with any information, regardless of what they say. Of course, Mrs. Blackwell. And if I may offer personal advice, I think you should be careful. I've seen similar cases before, and they rarely end well for the elderly person involved. After hanging up, I stood looking out my window at Boston's nighttime skyline, a city I had watched grow alongside my fortune. What I had just discovered was only the tip of the iceberg, and I knew it. If Victor was investigating my bank accounts, he was likely planning something much bigger, but I never imagined my own daughter could be involved in a scheme to take what I had built with so much effort throughout my entire life. I barely slept that night. I wondered what other steps Elaine and Victor might have taken to undermine my authority. Had they spoken to doctors? Were they consulting with lawyers about how to declare an elderly person mentally incompetent? The idea sent chills down my spine. At 72, I kept myself physically active, mentally sharp, and completely capable of managing my complex financial empire. However, I knew how vulnerable older people could be to greedy family members, especially when they were determined to gain control of their assets. What I couldn't imagine was that my salvation would come in the most unexpected and innocent form possible, and that I would soon discover the true magnitude of the betrayal being prepared against me. The following weeks confirmed my suspicions. Elaine began to casually mention stories about elderly people who had been scammed or who had made disastrous financial decisions due to their advanced age. Victor, meanwhile, started offering to review my financial documents, claiming he could help me better organize my investments. Mother-in-law, I've been reading about estate planning, he told me one Sunday during our family lunch. There are many ways to optimize your assets and reduce taxes. We could meet with my friend Nathan. He's an excellent attorney who specializes in these matters. Thank you, Victor, but I have Rebecca, my attorney for the past 25 years. I replied dryly. She knows my legal and tax situation perfectly. I saw him exchange a quick glance with Elaine. It wasn't hard to guess what they were thinking. My trusted attorney represented an obstacle to their plans. What really alarmed me happened 2 weeks later. Elaine came to my house with a folder full of documents. Mom, Victor and I have been researching, and we think you should consider granting me a general power of attorney, she said as she spread several papers on the table. It's simply a precaution so I can help you with your financial affairs if you ever need it. I carefully examined the documents, keeping my face impassive despite the indignation growing inside me. It wasn't a simple power of attorney. It was a document that would give Elaine complete control over all my properties, bank accounts, investments, and even medical decisions. Essentially, it would turn me into a child under her guardianship. And why would I need this now, Elaine? I've managed my affairs perfectly for decades. It's just a precaution, Mom, she insisted, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We all get older, and sometimes memory or decision-making ability can diminish. We don't want to wait until it's too late. I see, I replied, folding the documents and returning them to her. I'll think about it. Don't think about it too long, Mom. We've already scheduled an appointment with the notary for next week. He's a friend of Victor's. He'll give us a special rate. A special rate? In 45 years of real estate business, I'd learned that when someone offers a special rate from a notary, There's usually something shady involved. Reputable notaries charge fixed fees established by law. Plus, they had made an appointment without consulting me first. The situation was becoming increasingly alarming. That night I called my friend Beatrice, a widow like me, and owner of a chain of boutiques. We had known each other for 30 years, and I trusted her completely. Beatrice, I need to ask you something. Has any of your children suggested that you grant them a general power of attorney? Are you kidding, Harriet? Not in a million years would I allow that. As long as I'm lucid and can handle my own affairs, nobody will touch my money. Why do you ask? I told her about Elaine and Victor. Beatrice remained silent for a few seconds. Harriet, be very careful. My cousin Georgia experienced something similar with her eldest son. First came the power of attorney, then they began to isolate her from her friends. Finally, they declared her mentally incompetent and took control of everything. By the time she wanted to report them, it was legally too late. Her words confirmed my deepest fears. It was clear I needed to act, but I wanted to be completely sure before taking drastic measures against my own daughter. What I didn't know was that the confirmation I sought would arrive in the most unexpected and moving way possible. 2 days later, Olivia, my 10-year-old granddaughter, came to visit me after school. We had always had a special relationship, unlike Elaine, who had grown obsessed with social status and material possessions, despite my attempts to instill other values in her. Olivia was a sensitive, observant child with a strong sense of justice. Grandma, can I stay overnight with you tonight? She asked as we shared hot chocolate and homemade cookies in my kitchen. Of course, sweetheart. But don't your parents have plans for tonight? Olivia looked down at her cup, avoiding my eyes. I don't want to be at home. Mom and Dad have been acting weird. They argue a lot when they think I'm asleep. My heart quickened. What kind of arguments, darling? Olivia looked up, and I could see worry in her eyes. They talk about you, Grandma. About your money and your houses. Dad says they need to get something called guardianship because you're going crazy. The words hit me like a slap, but I made an effort to stay calm for Olivia's sake. Did you hear anything else, my child? Olivia nodded slowly. Last night I went downstairs for some water, and they were in the study. The door was ajar, and I heard them talking to someone on the phone. Dad was saying they had a doctor who was going to write that you can't take care of yourself, and that afterward they could take all your money. My hands trembled, but I kept them steady around my cup. Did they say anything else? Olivia? Mom said she felt bad about doing this, but Dad said they had already spent too much money and that if they didn't get my money? Yes. He said if they didn't get your money soon, they would have to sell the house and the car because they owe a lot of money to someone named Kevin. So there it was. My daughter and my son-in-law not only wanted to take control of my fortune, they desperately needed it due to debts. They had probably been living beyond their means, counting on eventually inheriting my money. And now, impatient and pressured by their creditors, they had decided to accelerate the process by declaring me mentally incompetent. Grandma, are you angry with me for telling you? Olivia asked with tears in her eyes. I hugged her tightly. No, my love. I could never be angry with you for telling the truth. On the contrary, you've done me a great favor. You're very brave and honest, and I'm very proud of you. What are you going to do, Grandma? I looked at my granddaughter, so young but already able to understand the gravity of the situation. At that moment, I made a decision that would change the course of our lives forever. I'm going to protect us, Olivia. You and me. But I need you to promise me something. You must not tell anyone, especially your parents, that you've told me this. Can you keep our secret? Olivia nodded solemnly. I promise, Grandma. That night, while Olivia slept in the guest room, I sat in my office and began to plan my counterattack. I wasn't going to let decades of hard work end up in the hands of people who had done nothing to deserve it, even if those people were my own flesh and blood. What Elaine and Victor didn't know was that they were about to meet the real Harriet Blackwell, the woman who had built an empire from scratch and who wouldn't let herself be robbed of a single penny without a fight. My first step was to contact Rebecca, my trusted attorney for decades. Despite it being almost midnight, she answered my call. Harriet, what's wrong? Are you okay? Rebecca, I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. It's urgent and extremely confidential. Without asking further questions, Rebecca agreed to meet me at 8:80 a.m. Then I called Gregory, my bank manager. Gregory, I need you to temporarily freeze all my accounts at First Commonwealth. No one, absolutely no one, should be able to access them, except me, in person, with complete identification. Has something happened, Mrs. Blackwell? Yes, but I prefer not to discuss it over the phone. I'll also need a complete report of all my banking transactions from the last 6 months. Could you prepare that for tomorrow? After hanging up, I stood contemplating Boston's lights from my office window. My mind was working at full speed, evaluating options, anticipating obstacles, planning my strategy. If Elaine and Victor wanted war, I'd give them a war they would never forget. What they didn't imagine was that they were facing an adversary with 5 decades of experience in tough negotiations and crisis situations. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. I no longer felt vulnerable or scared. I had regained control of the situation and was ready to fight. What would come next would be a lesson my daughter and son-in-law would never forget. The next morning, I woke up early and prepared a special breakfast for Olivia. Pancakes with maple syrup, her favorite. While we ate breakfast, I explained that I needed to attend to some important errands and that my housekeeper, Martha, would stay with her until I returned. Are you going to fight Mom and Dad, Grandma? She asked with wisdom beyond her years. Not exactly, sweetheart. I'm going to protect what's mine, what I've built throughout my entire life. Someday you'll understand completely why this is so important. Olivia looked at me with her big brown eyes. I already understand, Grandma. It's not fair for them to want to take your things. And besides, they were lying about you. You're not crazy or confused. I smiled at her tenderly. Thank you, my treasure. Now why don't you ask Martha to help you bake those cookies you like so much while I'm gone? My meeting with Rebecca was intense and productive. I told her everything: Victor's questions at the bank, the power of attorney Elaine wanted me to sign, and most importantly, what Olivia had overheard. Rebecca took detailed notes, her expression becoming more serious with each revelation. Harriet, this is very serious. What they're planning could constitute attempted fraud against an elderly person, which is a serious crime. If they obtain a false medical diagnosis to declare you incompetent, they could take legal control of all your assets. What can I do to prevent it? Rebecca thought for a moment. First, we need to document your current mental capacity. I recommend you undergo a complete cognitive assessment with a recognized specialist. Second, we need to update your will and establish a bulletproof trust to protect your assets. And third, we need to gather evidence of Elaine and Victor's plans. Evidence? You mean Olivia's testimony? No, Harriet. I would never put your granddaughter in that position. I mean concrete evidence, communications, fraudulent medical consultations, suspicious financial movements. For that, we'll need the help of a private investigator. We spent the next few hours planning every detail. Rebecca recommended Walter Mason, a former police officer who now worked as a private investigator specializing in family fraud cases. We also arranged an appointment for the following day with Dr. Amanda Thornton, an internationally recognized neuropsychologist, for a complete cognitive assessment. From there, I went directly to meet with Gregory at First Commonwealth Bank. He gave me a detailed report of my accounts and confirmed that he had temporarily frozen access to them as I had requested. Mrs. Blackwell, there's something else you should know, said Gregory, lowering his voice. 3 weeks ago, your son-in-law came with a document that you had supposedly signed, authorizing him to review your account statements. My heart raced. I never signed such a document. I suspected as much. The signature didn't exactly match the one we have on file, so I told him we needed to verify it with you personally before proceeding. He was very insistent, even threatened to file a formal complaint. Thank you for your diligence, Gregory. That could have been disastrous. There's something else, Mrs. Blackwell. Your son-in-law also specifically asked about your properties in Charleston and Naples. I froze. The properties in Charleston and Naples were part of my private investment portfolio, managed through a separate limited liability company. Very few people knew of their existence, certainly not Victor or Elaine. How did he know about those properties? I murmured, more to myself than to Gregory. I don't know, ma'am, but given what you're telling me, I think someone is providing him with confidential information about your affairs. A traitor within my close circle. The idea turned my stomach. Who could be leaking private information to my son-in-law? My accountant? One of my property managers? Or someone even closer? That afternoon, I met with Walter Mason in a discreet cafe in the Back Bay neighborhood. He was a middle-aged man with penetrating eyes that seemed to capture every detail. Mrs. Blackwell, your attorney has briefed me on the general situation. I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, omitting no detail, no matter how insignificant it may seem. For more than an hour, I recounted every suspicious interaction with Elaine and Victor from the past few months. I told him about the change in their behavior, the questions about my finances, the attempt to obtain a power of attorney, and what Olivia had overheard. Here's what I propose, said Walter after listening attentively. First, I'll investigate your daughter and son-in-law's finances. We need to understand why they need money so urgently. Second, I'll find out which doctor they're collaborating with to obtain a false diagnosis. And third, I'll install discrete surveillance systems in key areas of your house to document any future manipulation attempts. Surveillance in my own house? I asked, surprised. Only in common areas, and only temporarily. Based on what you've told me, they're likely to intensify their efforts in the coming weeks. We need to be prepared. Despite my initial discomfort, I agreed to the plan. Walter assured me that the installation would be completely discreet, and that the devices would be virtually undetectable. One more thing, Mrs. Blackwell. I need you to act normally. If Elaine and Victor suspect you know something, they might change tactics or accelerate their plans. Continue treating them as usual, perhaps even appear a bit more vulnerable or indecisive than normal. Let them think they're winning. I returned home just in time for afternoon snack with Olivia. While we shared cookies and milk, she excitedly told me about the cookies she had baked with Martha. Grandma, can I stay with you tonight too? She asked with hope in her eyes. I'd love that, treasure, but your parents will be worried. In fact, they should be arriving soon to pick you up. As if I had summoned them with my words, the doorbell rang. It was Elaine, alone, with an expression of feigned concern on her face. Mom, why didn't you tell me Olivia would be staying overnight? I was calling you all night. I'm sorry, dear. It was impromptu, and I forgot to let you know. You know I always enjoy spending time with my granddaughter. Elaine looked around as if assessing the house. Are you okay, Mom? You look tired. It was time to follow Walter's advice. I let my shoulders slump slightly and sighed. The truth is, I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately with all the properties and investments. There are so many details to remember. Elaine's eyes lit up. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. That's normal at your age, Mom. That's why Victor and I want to help you. Have you thought about the power of attorney I mentioned? Yes. I've been considering it. Perhaps you're right, and it's time to simplify some things. Elaine's smile widened. I'm glad to hear you say that, Mom. In fact, the appointment with the notary is this Friday. We could go together, it will be quick and simple. This Friday, I said, pretending to try to remember something. I think I have to see my doctor that day. Your doctor? Are you sick? No, it's just a routine checkup. Nothing to worry about. Elaine looked at me suspiciously. Which doctor, Mom? Dr. Mitchell? No, it's a new doctor. A friend recommended her to me. What's her name? Maybe I could go with you. That's not necessary, Elaine. I can go to my medical appointments by myself. Elaine seemed about to insist, but Olivia appeared at that moment, saving me from the interrogation. Mommy, look at the cookies I made with Martha. Grandma says they have the best taste in the world. The conversation shifted, but I could see that Elaine was processing the information. She would probably tell Victor about my supposed confusion and my mysterious medical appointment as soon as she got home. I was setting the bait, and they were biting exactly as I had planned. What they didn't know was that while they believed they were getting closer to their goal, I was weaving a net around them that would soon close completely. And when that happened, they would realize they had gravely underestimated the woman they were trying to defraud. The next few days were a whirlwind of covert activity. While I maintained a facade of normalcy and even growing vulnerability in front of Elaine and Victor, I worked discreetly with Rebecca, Walter, and a team of professionals to build my defense. My evaluation with Dr. Thornton was exhaustive. 5 hours of cognitive tests, interviews, and assessments. At the end, she handed me a detailed report certifying my full mental capacity. Mrs. Blackwell, not only are you perfectly lucid, but your cognitive abilities are well above average for your age group, she told me with a smile. It would be absurd for anyone to suggest otherwise. Rebecca used this report to update my will and establish a bulletproof trust for my assets. She also prepared legal documents to counter any attempt to declare my incapacity. Meanwhile, Walter Mason discovered alarming information about Elaine and Victor's finances. They were neck-deep in debt, unpaid mortgage, personal loans, maxed-out credit cards. But most serious was a debt of $400,000 to a lender known for his aggressive collection methods. His name is Kevin Maddox, Walter explained to me. He's not exactly a criminal, but he operates at the limits of legality. Your son-in-law invested in a failed real estate development, and now Maddox wants his money back. He's given them an ultimatum: pay by the end of the month. Walter had also discovered the doctor involved in the plan, Dr. Samuel Wright, a psychiatrist with gambling problems and debts of his own. Victor had offered him $30,000 to draft a false report declaring my mental incapacity. The most concerning thing, continued Walter, is that they're not acting alone. Someone else is involved. Someone from your close circle who's providing them with confidential information about your finances and properties. Have you discovered who it is? Not yet, but we're following several leads. What I can confirm is that the appointment with the notary this Friday is real, and they already have Dr. Wright's false diagnosis prepared. As I absorbed this information, my phone rang. It was Elaine. Mom, how did it go with your doctor? Fine, dear. Just a routine checkup, I replied, keeping my tone casual. I'm glad. Hey, I was thinking, why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow? It's been a while since we had a quiet evening, just family. It was obvious what she was trying to do: keep me docile and unprepared until Friday. I decided to play along. I'd love that, Elaine. Should I bring anything? No, I'll take care of everything. Just bring your appetite, she replied with a sweetness that now sounded completely fake to my ears. After hanging up, I continued my meeting with Walter and Rebecca. Together, we finalized the plan for the big confrontation I was organizing. It would be a family meeting that Elaine and Victor would never forget. Remember, Harriet, said Rebecca before leaving, you need to stay calm throughout the confrontation. No matter what they say or do, don't lose control. I'll be there to support you legally, but you're the one who needs to direct the conversation. Don't worry, Rebecca. I've negotiated with real estate sharks for decades. My own daughter won't intimidate me. Dinner at Elaine's house. The next evening was an exercise in self-control. Victor was unusually attentive, repeatedly filling my wine glass and asking about my health. Elaine prepared all my favorite dishes and constantly talked about how much they cared for me. Mom, Victor and I have been thinking, when you signed the power of attorney on Friday, maybe you could consider moving in with us. This house is big, and we'd be delighted to have you here. Move in with you? I asked, feigning surprise. But I've always been very independent. Victor quickly chimed in. Mother-in-law, at your age, independence is important, but so is safety. What if you fall and there's no one to help you? Or if you forget to take your medication? I don't take any medication, Victor, I replied softly. Not yet, but eventually we all need some kind of medication, right? He insisted with a smile that sent chills down my spine. They were setting the stage to medicate me, probably with something that would affect my lucidity. The plan seemed increasingly sinister. Olivia, who had been unusually quiet during dinner, finally spoke up. I think Grandma is perfectly fine living alone in her house. She always says that's where she keeps all her memories. Elaine shot her a warning look. Olivia, the adults are discussing important matters. Why don't you go to your room and finish your homework? I already finished it, Olivia replied, looking at me with complicity. And I think Grandma should decide where she wants to live. Olivia, obey your mother, Victor ordered in a tone more severe than necessary. My granddaughter got up from the table, but before leaving, she came over and gave me a tight hug. I love you, Grandma, she whispered in my ear. The rest of the evening proceeded with more subtle attempts to convince me to sign the documents and move in with them. When I finally left, Elaine reminded me of our appointment with the notary. We'll pick you up at 10 hours, Mom. Don't worry about anything. We'll take care of everything. I'm sure they would, I thought as I said goodbye with a smile. What they didn't know was that I had taken care of everything too, and I was about to give them the surprise of their lives. Friday morning dawned clear and bright, as if the universe was conspiring to make this day a memorable moment. I dressed carefully, choosing an elegant gray suit, discreet jewelry, and impeccable makeup. I wanted to look powerful and completely lucid for what was about to happen. At 9:30, Rebecca arrived at my house along with Walter, Gregory from the bank, and Dr. Thornton. I had also invited my old friend Beatrice, who had known Elaine since she was a child. I explained the plan to them once more, making sure everyone understood their roles. Harriet, said Beatrice, taking my hands, I'm impressed by your strength. Many people in your situation would have simply given up. I've never given up in my life, Beatrice, and I'm not about to start now, especially when it comes to protecting what I've built with so much effort. At 10 Sarad sharp, the doorbell rang. Elaine and Victor had arrived, punctual as they had promised. I asked my guests to wait in my study while I received my daughter and son-in-law in the foyer. Good morning, Mom, Elaine greeted, kissing me on both cheeks. Are you ready to go to the notary? Actually, Elaine, I've been thinking, why don't we discuss some details here first, calmly? There are a few things I'd like to clarify before signing any document. I saw her exchange a quick glance with Victor. Clearly, this wasn't in their plans. Of course, Mom, she finally replied. Whatever you prefer. I led them to the main living room, where I offered them seats on the sofa. Elaine, Victor, before we proceed with this power of attorney, I think we should discuss exactly what properties and assets I would be placing under your control. Victor settled comfortably on the sofa, visibly more relaxed. Of course, mother-in-law. It's important that we're all on the same page. I understand that you know about my 15 residential buildings in Boston, my 5 commercial properties downtown, and my accounts at First Commonwealth Bank, correct? Yes, more or less, replied Elaine. We know you have some properties and savings. Some properties and savings, I repeated slowly. Interesting way to describe a multi-million-dollar estate. Victor cleared his throat. Mother-in-law, the exact value isn't important. What concerns us is your well-being and ensuring everything is well managed. My well-being and the good management of my assets, I nodded. Noble concerns, Victor. So, why have you been lying to the bank about my mental state? Why consult with a psychiatrist to falsify a diagnosis of incapacity? Why plan to have me legally declared incompetent? The color drained from both their faces. Elaine was the first to recover. Mom, what are you talking about? We would never do something like that. We only want to help you. Save the lies, Elaine, I interrupted, my voice firm but controlled. I know everything. I know about your debts to Kevin Maddox. I know about the false diagnosis you've arranged with Dr. Wright. I know about your plans to control my money and possibly medicate me to keep me docile. Victor stood up, his face now red with anger or shame. I couldn't tell which. Those are very serious accusations, Mrs. Blackwell. I don't know who's been filling your head with these ideas, but sit down, Victor, I ordered, in a tone that admitted no reply. Surprisingly, he obeyed. And as for who informed me, I think it's time you met my guests. I opened the door to the living room and invited Rebecca, Walter, Gregory, Dr. Thornton, and Beatrice to enter. Elaine and Victor looked at them with a mixture of confusion and growing horror. Let me introduce you to Rebecca Hayes, my personal attorney. Walter Mason, private investigator. Gregory Phillips, director of my bank branch. Dr. Amanda Thornton, neuropsychologist. And of course, you know my friend Beatrice. The room fell into absolute silence. I could see Elaine and Victor desperately trying to understand what was happening and calculate their next moves. Elaine, Victor, you thought you were dealing with a vulnerable, easily manipulated old woman, I continued. But what you didn't understand is that I haven't survived and prospered in the business world for 45 years by being naive or careless. Rebecca stepped forward. As Mrs. Blackwell's attorney, I must inform you that your actions constitute attempted fraud against an elderly person, falsification of medical documents, and conspiracy to commit fraud. All of these are serious crimes that can result in substantial prison sentences. Victor turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have any plan. Walter intervened, placing a folder on the coffee table. Mr. Reynolds, I have complete documentation of your communications with Dr. Samuel Wright, including bank transfers worth $5,000 as an advance for a fraudulent medical diagnosis. I also have recordings of your conversations with 3 different notaries, seeking someone who would facilitate the rapid transfer of assets without too many questions. Elaine began to cry, large silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I replied, my voice trembling slightly for the first time. Is it a misunderstanding that you plan to declare your own mother crazy? That you were going to steal everything I built over decades of work? That you were possibly planning to medicate me to keep me under control? We were desperate, whispered Elaine. The debts? Kevin Maddox threatened to hurt us if we didn't pay. So you decided to hurt your mother instead, concluded Beatrice with evident disgust. Victor, seeing that denial was no longer viable, changed strategy. Harriet, you have to understand our situation. The investments failed. Loans accumulated. We just needed time to recover. We would never have done anything to really hurt you. Really hurt me? I repeated incredulously. What do you consider really hurting, Victor? Stealing my properties, my money, my independence, my dignity. Which part of that isn't really hurting? Dr. Thornton spoke for the first time. As a medical professional, I must say that what you were planning to do is deeply unethical and potentially very harmful. Mrs. Blackwell is in full possession of her mental faculties. In fact, her cognitive abilities are exceptional for any age. Gregory added, and regarding her finances, Mrs. Blackwell manages her accounts and properties with a precision and vision that many of our younger clients would envy. I stood up and walked to the window, contemplating for a moment the garden I had personally designed years ago. Then I turned back to Elaine and Victor. What you don't know, what you never bothered to ask, is that my real estate empire is much more extensive than you imagine. Besides the properties in Boston that you know about, I have developments in Charleston, Naples, San Francisco, and Chicago. My investments aren't limited to First Commonwealth Bank. I have accounts in 4 different financial institutions and holdings in companies in 3 countries. My total assets are approximately 3 times greater than you believe. Victor's expression was a mixture of disbelief and renewed greed. Even in this moment of exposure, he couldn't hide his avarice. But that no longer matters to you, I continued, because you will never, ever see a penny of my money. Elaine sobbed louder. Mom, please. I've updated my will. All my assets, without exception, will pass to a bulletproof trust that will be managed by a team of professionals until Olivia turns 25. At that time, if she demonstrates the necessary maturity and responsibility, she will inherit everything. Olivia? Exclaimed Victor, unable to contain his surprise and fury. But she's just a child. A child who showed more integrity and true love than her own parents, I replied severely. a child who had the courage to protect her grandmother when her parents were conspiring to hurt her. Olivia told you about our conversations? Asked Elaine, now with an expression of betrayal on her face. That's not relevant, intervened Rebecca. What's relevant is that we have sufficient evidence to file criminal charges against both of you. Mrs. Blackwell could send you to prison for what you've attempted to do. Victor collapsed onto the sofa. All his arrogance finally vanished. Are you going to report us? Your own daughter and son-in-law? I looked at Elaine, this child I had raised with so much love and hope. How had we reached this point? Where had I failed as a mother to raise a daughter capable of such betrayal? No, I'm not going to report you, I finally said. Not out of mercy for you, but out of love for Olivia. I don't want her to grow up with her parents in prison. But there are conditions. Rebecca took out a different folder and extracted a legal document. This is an out-of-court settlement, she explained. It establishes that you acknowledge having attempted to defraud Harriet and renounce any claim to her estate, now or in the future. In exchange, she won't file criminal charges. It also stipulates that you must pay all debts you have to her within an established time frame. Debts? Asked Victor, confused. The $350,000 I've lent you over the last 8 years, I clarified. Every gift, every help, every temporary loan that you never repaid. Everything is documented, with exact dates and amounts. We don't have that kind of money, Mom, Elaine said desperately. It's impossible. I don't expect you to pay it immediately. You'll have to sell your current house and move to something you can actually afford. You'll start living according to your real means, not with the expectation of my inheritance. Victor seemed about to protest, but Elaine stopped him with a hand on his arm. Is there anything else? She asked quietly. Yes. You will never again attempt to manipulate or deceive me. My relationship with Olivia will continue without interference. And finally, you'll have to earn back my trust inch by inch if you ever want to recover a normal relationship with me. The silence that followed was dense and loaded with emotions. Finally, Elaine spoke. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. The debts, the pressure, the fear. It's not an excuse. I know, but I never really wanted to hurt you. Elaine, I replied, your actions say otherwise. Words are easy. Now I need to see real changes. Victor, always more practical, pointed to the documents, and if we don't sign, Walter smiled for the first time. Then we'll hand over our entire file to the district attorney. And believe me, Mr. Reynolds, you won't want to face a judge with the evidence we've collected. There was no further discussion. Elaine and Victor signed the documents, their hands trembling slightly. When they finished, I asked them to leave. I needed space, time to process everything that had happened. Elaine tried to hug me before leaving, but I stepped back. The wounds were too fresh, the betrayal too deep. After everyone left, only Beatrice and I remained in the living room, sitting in silence for a long while. How do you feel? She finally asked. Empty, sad, angry, relieved, all at once. You've handled this with extraordinary strength, Harriet. I sighed deeply. I didn't feel strong when Olivia told me what they had planned. I felt betrayed, scared, hurt. But then I remembered who I am. I remembered all the battles I've fought and won in my life. And I decided this would be one more. Beatrice took my hand. What will you do now? I looked out the window, toward the garden where the roses were beginning to bloom. I'll continue living my life on my own terms. I'll keep expanding my business. I'll teach Olivia everything I know about finance, properties, and investments. And maybe with time, I'll find a way to forgive my daughter. What I didn't know at that moment was that the path to reconciliation would be long and difficult, with setbacks and moments of doubt. But it would also bring unexpected revelations, and finally, a new understanding between mother and daughter. The following weeks were a whirlwind of changes. Elaine and Victor put their house up for sale and began looking for a more modest apartment. Walter continued his investigation and discovered that the information leaker had been Victor's personal assistant, who had access to some of my documents through contacts in my property management company. I fired him immediately, of course. My relationship with Olivia grew even stronger. I began teaching her about basic finance, adapted to her age, and she absorbed everything enthusiastically. Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be like you, she told me one day as we reviewed the plans for a new renovation project together. Like me? I asked, smiling. Yes. Strong, smart, and able to build things that last. Her words filled me with a pride I had never felt before. Perhaps my greatest legacy wouldn't be the real estate empire I had built, but this bright child who would carry my values and knowledge into the future. Elaine and I barely spoke during that period. When we saw each other, usually to drop off or pick up Olivia, the conversation was brief and formal. I could see the remorse in her eyes, but broken trust isn't easily repaired. Victor, for his part, seemed ashamed to face me and avoided eye contact on the rare occasions when we met. 3 months after the confrontation, Elaine asked to meet with me alone. We met at a neutral cafe, a territory that belonged to neither of us. Mom, she began, her voice trembling. I know you probably can never completely forgive me for what we tried to do. I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry. There isn't a single day when I don't wake up feeling shame and remorse. I observed her carefully, looking for signs of manipulation, but I only saw sincere regret. What has changed, Elaine? Why should I believe you now? We've sold the house, she replied. We've moved to a small apartment near Olivia's school. Victor has found a second job to help pay our debts. We're living with what we actually earn, for the first time in our adult lives. And how does that feel? Elaine smiled weakly. At first it was terrifying, then humiliating. Now, it's strangely liberating. No more pretenses, no more false appearances, no more living beyond our means waiting for an inheritance to save us. I took a sip of my coffee, processing her words. And Victor? He's changing, Mom. Slowly but changing. The experience has made him more humble. He no longer talks about shortcuts to get rich or plans for easy money. He's focused on working hard and rebuilding our life step by step. I'm glad to hear that, I said sincerely. But you understand that trust isn't rebuilt in a single conversation, right? I know, Mom. I'm just asking for the opportunity to prove to you, with time and actions, that we've learned our lesson. Not just for you or for us, but especially for Olivia. She mentioned her daughter, and I could see genuine pain in her eyes. How are things with Olivia? Complicated. She knows we did something wrong, though she doesn't know all the details. She looks at us differently now, more cautiously. We're working to regain her trust too. We remained silent for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, I spoke. Elaine, I can't promise that things will go back to how they were before. That will never happen. But I am willing to try to build a new relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. It will take time, a lot of time. Elaine's eyes filled with tears of relief. Thank you, Mom. It's more than I deserve. As the months passed, our relationship began to heal gradually. It wasn't the blind, unconditional bond we once had, but something more mature, more conscious, with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. Elaine and Victor kept their word, selling their house and using the money to begin paying their debts, including the one they had with me. 6 months after the confrontation, I invited Elaine, Victor, and Olivia to dinner at my house. It was the first time we had gathered as a family since that fateful day. The tension was palpable at first, but Olivia, with her innocence and enthusiasm, helped break the ice. Grandma, tell them about our new renovation project, she exclaimed during dinner. What project? Asked Elaine, genuinely curious. Olivia and I are renovating a small apartment in Cambridge, I explained. It's an educational project. She helps with design decisions, learns about budgets and planning, and even visits the site with me on weekends. Victor seemed impressed. That's quite a responsibility for a child her age. You underestimate her, Victor, I replied without hostility. Olivia has a natural instinct for business and an impressive work ethic. I think she has the potential to become an excellent entrepreneur someday. I saw pride mixed with some sadness in Elaine's eyes. She was probably thinking about how she had wasted her own potential, expecting to inherit wealth instead of building it. After dinner, while Olivia was showing her parents an interior design book I had given her, I had a moment of epiphany. Despite the pain and betrayal, something good had emerged from this terrible experience. Olivia now had a role model in me. She was learning valuable skills, and her parents were learning the value of honest work and financial responsibility. Perhaps, I thought, this was the true legacy I would leave. Not just properties and money, but life lessons, values, and wisdom. And perhaps, with time, even this painful betrayal could be transformed into an opportunity for growth and redemption. 1 year after the confrontation, I received an unexpected call from Victor. He sounded nervous, something unusual for him. "Harriet, could we meet to talk?" "There's something important I'd like to discuss with you." We agreed to meet at my office the next day. When he arrived, I noticed he looked different. Thinner, with slightly graying hair at the temples, but also more focused, less artificial. "Thank you for seeing me, Harriet," he began, sitting across from my desk. "What I want to propose might sound strange after everything that's happened, but I ask that you listen to me until the end." "I'm listening," I replied, intrigued. "I've been working on a small real estate project, very modest compared to what you manage. It's a renovation of an old building to convert it into affordable apartments for students." "Go on." "I've secured investors for half the project, but I need financing to complete it. I could go to a bank, but the interest rates are prohibitive for this type of project. I was wondering if you would consider investing." I was genuinely surprised. Victor asking me to invest in his project after everything that had happened. Why come to me, Victor? Surely I'm the last person you'd expect to give you money after what happened. Victor nodded. "I understand that perfectly. But I'm not asking for a loan or a gift. I'm offering a real commercial investment, with all the appropriate legal documents, projected return of 12% annually, and your name on the project as an investing partner. I've brought the complete business plan, financial projections, permits, everything." He placed a folder on my desk. I opened it and began reviewing the documents. To my surprise, the plan was well thought out. The projections were realistic, and there was clearly a lot of work behind it. "Why are you doing this, Victor? Why not just stick with your job and forget about real estate business?" Victor took a deep breath before answering. "Because I finally understood what you've been trying to teach us for years. The value of hard work, the satisfaction of building something with your own hands and brain, not waiting for someone to give you everything. I want to prove to you, to Elaine, to Olivia, and especially to myself, that I can create value honestly." I studied him for a long moment. I saw in his eyes something I had never seen before, humility mixed with genuine determination. "I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Victor. I'm not going to invest in your project yet, but I'll offer you something potentially more valuable: mentorship. I'll review your plan, give you my honest opinion, point out potential problems, introduce you to useful contacts. If after 3 months of working together, I still believe in the project and your commitment, I'll consider an investment." Victor's face lit up with surprise and gratitude. "That would be amazing, Harriet. Much better than I expected. But there are conditions," I added firmly. "Total transparency, absolute honesty, and you'll work harder than you've ever worked in your life. There will be no shortcuts, no tricks, no manipulations." "I accept all your conditions," he replied without hesitation. And so began the most unexpected chapter of this story. Over the next few months, Victor and I met regularly to review his project. I taught him everything I knew about real estate development, from negotiating with contractors to managing budgets and schedules. I introduced him to key contacts in the sector and personally reviewed every aspect of the project. I was hard on him, demanding, without concessions. And to my surprise, Victor responded with a commitment and dedication he had never shown before. Elaine, initially skeptical about this strange partnership, soon joined some of our meetings. Seeing her interested in real estate business, something she had rejected throughout her adult life despite growing up surrounded by it, was a revelation. "I never really understood what you did, Mom," she confessed to me one day after a particularly productive meeting. "I always thought it was boring and complicated. But now I see the creativity, the strategy, the intellectual challenge. It's fascinating." "It's never too late to learn, daughter," I replied, feeling a strange pride mixed with nostalgia for all the years we could have shared this knowledge. Olivia, of course, was delighted with this new family dynamic. She often joined our meetings, absorbing information like a sponge and asking surprisingly insightful questions for a child her age. "Grandma," she asked me one afternoon as we reviewed plans, "why are you helping Dad with his project after what they tried to do to you?" The question, so direct and innocent, left me momentarily speechless. Finally, I answered with the truth. "Because sometimes, Olivia, when people make mistakes but are truly sorry and work hard to change, they deserve a second chance. Not to receive blind trust again, but to prove through actions that they have learned and grown." Olivia nodded, processing my words with that seriousness that characterized her. "Like when I broke your favorite vase and then saved up to buy you a new one." I smiled at the comparison. "Something like that, but on a much larger scale. And there's another important reason." "What's that?" "I'm doing this for you too. I want you to see that even after very painful conflicts, families can heal if there's genuine willingness and hard work involved. I want you to learn about forgiveness, but also about establishing healthy boundaries and valuing yourself." 3 months after our first meeting, as I had promised, I thoroughly reviewed Victor's project. He had met every one of my conditions, worked tirelessly, and the project was now significantly more solid. I decided to invest, not only for the potential financial return, but because I recognized the value of supporting this positive change in Victor, in Elaine, and in our family dynamics. The project turned out to be a success. The student apartments were completed on time and within budget, rented quickly, and began generating profits above the initial projections. More importantly, this success was built on a foundation of honest work and genuine effort, not on manipulation or deception plans. 18 months after the day I discovered the plan to declare me incompetent, I received a call from Elaine. She sounded excited. "Mom, I have important news. Can we meet today?" We agreed to meet for lunch. When she arrived, I immediately noticed something different about her. A serene confidence I hadn't seen before, very different from the empty arrogance she used to project. "Victor and I want to pay back all the money you've lent us over the years," she announced after ordering. "With the profits from the project and our jobs, we've managed to save enough." I was pleasantly surprised, but also curious. "That's admirable, Elaine. But you don't need to do it all at once. We had agreed on a gradual payment plan." "I know, but we want to do it. It's important to us to close that chapter and really start anew." She paused and took a deep breath. "And there's something else. Victor and I are thinking of starting our own small, modest real estate business, focused on sustainable, affordable housing. We don't want to compete with you, of course, but find our own niche." For the first time in many years, I saw in Elaine the curious and determined child she had once been, before social expectations and the pressure to maintain a certain status had diverted her from her path. "I think that's an excellent idea," I replied sincerely. "And if you need advice or contacts, I'll be happy to help, as an advisor, not as an investor or lender." Elaine smiled, perfectly understanding the distinction. "That would be perfect, Mom. We want to build this ourselves, prove that we can do it." At that moment, I felt we had finally come full circle. The betrayal would never be forgotten, but it had been transformed into an opportunity for growth and renewal for the entire family. 2 years after the confrontation, I organized a special dinner at my house. Elaine, Victor, and Olivia arrived punctually, bringing flowers and a bottle of my favorite wine. During dinner, I handed each of them an envelope. "What's this, Grandma?" asked Olivia, always the first to show curiosity. "Open it and find out," I replied, enjoying the moment. The three opened their envelopes simultaneously. Inside, each found different documents. For Olivia, confirmation of an educational trust that would allow her to study at any university in the world she chose. For Elaine and Victor, certificates for minority shares in my real estate company. Mom, this is. Elaine was speechless, holding the documents with trembling hands. It's not a gift, I clarified immediately. It's an opportunity. The shares are minority, don't give decision-making rights, and are non-transferable. They represent my recognition of the hard work and genuine change I've seen in you over the past 2 years. Harriet, I don't know what to say, murmured Victor, clearly moved. You don't need to say anything. Just keep demonstrating through actions that you've learned the most important lessons, that true wealth comes from honest work, that integrity is worth more than any amount of money, and that trust, once broken, can only be rebuilt with time, effort, and consistency. Olivia, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. Grandma, does this mean you've forgiven Mom and Dad? I looked at my granddaughter, so wise for her young age, and then at my daughter and son-in-law. It means we're writing a new chapter in our family history, one based on mutual respect, clear boundaries, and shared values. Forgiveness is a process, Olivia, not an event, and we're advancing in that process day by day. That night, as I saw them off at the door, Elaine hugged me spontaneously. For the first time since the confrontation, I returned the hug without reservations. Thank you, Mom. Not for the shares, but for giving us the opportunity to prove we can change. Everyone deserves second chances, daughter. What's important is what we do with them. As I closed the door behind them, I reflected on the extraordinary journey we had undertaken. What began as a devastating betrayal had evolved into something I never would have anticipated: a stronger, more authentic family, more united by shared values rather than inheritance expectations. At 74, I was still actively managing my real estate empire, now with the occasional help of Elaine and Victor, who were developing their own small business in parallel. Olivia, now 12, showed a natural talent for business and an integrity that filled me with pride. Sometimes I think about that day when my 10-year-old granddaughter whispered in my ear about her parents' plot. At that moment, it seemed like the end of our family as we knew it. Now I see it was really a new beginning, a painful but necessary awakening that allowed us to rebuild on more authentic and solid foundations. My story is a testament that it's never too late to stand up for what is yours, to establish clear boundaries, and to demand the respect you deserve, even from those closest to you. It's also a testament that betrayal, though painful, doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it can be the catalyst for a profound and lasting transformation. To all older people who may be facing similar situations, my message is clear. Don't let anyone, not even your loved ones, take away what you've built with so much effort. Keep your eyes open, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to act to protect yourself. And for those who have experienced family betrayal, remember this: forgiveness is possible, but it must be earned with actions, not just words. Setting boundaries isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. And sometimes, the greatest teaching we can leave to future generations isn't a material legacy, but an example of dignity, strength, and wisdom.